Universe Maker's first scroll. Please view the description for trigger warnings to make sure this is content you're comfortable with. Chapter 13. Hannah stepped into the bright light from the tunnel and tried to make sense of what she was seeing. It looked like a bunch of floating boulders ahead of her. She moved forward several steps and stopped instantly. Her breath caught. She couldn't remember how to start it again. Below her feet, the rocky land dropped into a big, black nothing. No land below her, no bridge, nothing between the floating boulders but black space. She dreaded looking, pretty sure she knew what she would see, but she pulled her eyes up until she was looking straight ahead. There it was. The tablet was floating above a massive solid land formation similar to the one she was currently standing on. Hannah cursed. It was several yards ahead of them with only clumps of floating stones with a fall into empty space in between. Hannah swallowed hard. She was going to have to jump repeatedly from one of these boulders to the next as quickly as possible to make it to the object first. She heard grunting ahead and to her left. A quick look, and she saw McCollin struggling about 3 boulders ahead. She didn't let herself think very long on this one. She tightened the shirt holding Rafi at her side again and closed her arm around him. She took several steps back and lined herself up with the closest boulder she could find. She took just a second to catch her breath and ran. She quickly reached the end of the land and jumped as hard as she could. One foot and then the other landed on the intended boulder. It bucked slightly from the impact, and Hannah dropped to her knees to keep from being tipped off. She quickly looked around to find her next boulder. The professor was to her left. Since she wanted to stay as far away from him as possible, she looked to the right. One was close, close enough to leap to without a running start. She got to her feet, backed up as much as she could, and took the 2 steps the boulder allowed as fast as she could. The boulder swayed back when she leaped, taking away most of the momentum she had counted on. The leap wasn't as far as she thought it would be. Only her toes on one foot barely made contact with the boulder. The force knocked the floating rock out from under the rest of her, and she fell back, completely stopping her heart. Rafi's paws snapped up, and she was floating again instead of falling. Hannah nearly laughed in relief. She totally forgot about Rafi's little trick. She turned her body to see if there was anything for her to land on and found more floating boulders beneath. Hannah wanted to hug Rafi, but she needed to get them both safely on semi-solid ground first. She lined them both up and landed softly on the surface. So softly this time, the rock didn't even jostle. I should have asked you for help, Hannah admitted once they were down. I'm still regretting you can't just float us to the end, she hoped. Rafi shook his head. You and me both, Rafi admitted. You know how it works better than I do. Where should I go next? She turned to Rafi. He pointed to one on the right, continuing in that direction Hannah had picked to stay away from the professor. Hannah swallowed hard. It was much further away than the others. You sure? Rocks, trust me, Rafi reminded. Hannah smiled down at him. For the first time in so long, she didn't feel alone. She, Rafi, the stone, even the air all around them were together on this. She made sure Rafi was secure, took a couple of steps back, then ran forward as much as the boulder allowed and jumped. Instead of the ground flinching back from her jump, it lurched forward, launching her into the air. Her body sprang forward, moving fast in the direction of the rock. She only dropped slightly as she moved forward fast and landed with both feet at the center of the intended rock. It held fast, didn't buck from the impact or move at all. The feeling was amazing. Hannah let out an exhilarated, "Whoa, thank you," before she remembered they were trying to stay clear of Professor McCollin. "Who's there?" a familiar voice demanded from somewhere above them. Hannah looked up at the same time the professor's round, balding head popped over the side of a boulder not far ahead of them. Hannah smiled. In 3 jumps, they'd almost caught up to him. "You! Why are you still alive?" he demanded. Hannah felt no need to explain. She also couldn't help giving him a cocky smile right before she leaped to the next rock Rafi had pointed out. This leap had them ahead of the jerk now. They were well on their way to getting to the object long before the creep could get his hands on limitless power. The sound of a gun going off cracked through the air. Part of the stone next to them exploded. Hannah cursed herself for underestimating the guy yet again. Raffi pointed at the next rock and she jumped. Gunfire sounded again. This time no rock shattered, and she landed safely. She didn't pause this time or wait. Raffi pointed their next location while she was still moving and she leapt. A loud curse sounded behind them and the gunfire stopped. She heard him grunting and heavy footsteps running. He was trying to get there first. Raffi pointed at the next spot and off she went. The far end of the rock field neared. She knew she would need to figure out a way to start heading up as well as forward. Her fall had put them in the bad position of giving McCullen the high ground and having them under the rock plateau that held the object. Raffi pointed at a rock that was slightly above them and not as far away. Anna smiled at him, thinking the same thing, or maybe he'd put the idea in her head. Either way, that's where they needed to go. When you jump, jump up more this time instead of out. I'll try to take care of the rest. Hannah nodded and did as he asked. With all her might, she jumped as high as she could, but she didn't get enough forward push. They started to descend, and they weren't close enough to the rock. Hannah desperately reached with her free arm, barely caught the smooth side, and her hand slipped down. Just before it came completely off the rock, Hannah felt a small crack and instantly curled her fingers into it. The crack bit into her fingers, and she was pretty sure one of her nails ripped, but she didn't let go. She felt their momentum stop and knew, although not pretty, they made it to the rock. Raffi, hold tight. I have to use this arm to pull us up, she let him know. She felt Raffi's arms close around her neck, but still waited until she heard him say he was ready. Only then did she raise her other arm, find a grip on the rock, and start to pull. She got Raffi over the side first, let go of him, and made sure he stepped safely on the rock before she finished getting herself there also. Her hand was painfully bleeding, but the time it took her getting them both on the rock gave Professor McCullen time he needed to catch up with them. Raffi took her hand as she looked up and saw the man take aim at them again. "We'll have to do that later," she yelled and grabbed him as the next shot cracked the air. She rolled away from the impact and sprang to her feet. She looked at Raffi's pointing finger and jumped harder than she'd ever jumped in her life and landed squarely on the rock that had been impossibly far away. One more leap and they'd be able to get the object. Another load of curses sounded behind her, and she knew he was aiming again. She found a small stone lying on the boulder they were currently running on and grabbed it. She leaped in the direction Raffi pointed, this time turning in midair. She took aim and threw the stone. Another shot sounded. Her body continued to turn, and she landed face forward on the ledge they needed. A little bit of climbing from here, and the object would be within reach. She heard the stone make contact with metal. The professor's howl let her know he'd been hit, and the distinct clatter of a gun falling safely away. Hannah pushed Raffi up to her shoulder, expecting him to grab onto her so she could use both hands to climb. He didn't. Wasting no time to explain to Raffi, she just tightened her grip on him and used both legs and one hand to climb. It was a little slower, but she could still do it. She neared the top, found two footholds, and pushed up. This finally put half her body over the flat part of the rock mass they needed. She lifted Raffi up and set him on the ground so she could pull herself up the rest of the way. He fell limply to his side the moment she let go. It wasn't until then she noticed the blood that had smeared down her arm. Everything in her mind froze. Her hand went to his little head. "Raffi, are you okay?" It was more of a plea than a question. Nothing came to her mind. No answer, no voice. Nothing but silence. Hannah scrambled over the ledge as quickly as she could and knelt beside him. She instantly searched through his fur and found the wound. She flipped her turtleneck off, balled it up, and pressed it tight to slow the bleeding. Her other hand stroked the fur at his head by his eyes to see if they would open. They did, barely at first, then a little more, but very weakly. What else could she do? The bleeding wasn't stopping. Her mind raced, but nothing came. She was helpless. Get the object. The words were more like weak echoes in her head, but she'd heard them. Hannah shook her head. I don't care about that stupid thing. You're hurt. I'm not leaving you, she promised with tears filling her eyes. It's the only way, Hannah. It's my only chance. You can't stop the bleeding, but it can. Please be the one who gets it. Hannah looked up. Professor McCullen was nearly to it. He'd already made it past the last boulder, one more jump, and he'd be right in front of it. Hannah shook her head, her jaw locked tight and her eyes narrowed, zeroing in on him. No way was he leaving with that today, not if she needed it to save Raffi. She ran toward him. He blindly jumped and stumbled that last little gap. He didn't even see her coming as he pushed himself up. He even stopped to chuckle and dust himself off before reaching for it. All the better, Hannah thought, and nearly laughed when his arm raised just as she needed it to. Hannah leaped into the air. She curled her hand back to her shoulder and raised her elbow, took aim, and hit. The stronger part of her arm between her elbow and her shoulder hit the weaker part of McCullen's between his elbow and his hand. She pulled back just enough force to keep from breaking his arm. He yelped in pain and flinched his arm back. His second arm swung at her when Anna landed on her feet, so she relaxed her knees and let her momentum pull herself to the ground. The professor's swing only made contact with thin air, but distracted him long enough for her to brace herself against the ground and kick him in the side, knocking him away from the object. She sprang to her feet and reached. Inches away, her arm was pulled back. She turned and tried to reach with her other arm, desperate to get it, not knowing how much time she had to save Raffi. His hand grabbed her hair and yanked hard, making her stumble away. He pulled her head around and with the back of his free hand swung hard, this time making clean contact with her face. The strike knocked her off her feet and she landed hard on the ground. Luckily, she also landed in front of him. She swept her legs at the foot he just lifted to step toward the object and yanked it back. He started to fall, but he was still close enough. She saw him reach for it and was clearly going to get it. She reached up, grabbed his tie, and pulled as hard as she could. This changed his angle enough that the tablet just brushed against his fingers before he fell. The move caused the unhappy result of the very heavy and violent Professor McCullen to land on top of her. She still wrapped her legs around his feet so he couldn't get up. He was still able to kneel and reared up, both fists clenched, his eyes focused on her, ready to strike. Hannah braced for the impacts, knowing it would hurt, but no matter what, she couldn't let him up, couldn't let him have the object, couldn't let Raffi die, not when she had the chance to save someone she loved. A gunshot shattered the air. Professor McCullen's body jolted that same moment. His face contorted in pain, his mouth opened wide in a silent yell. Blood streamed out of it instead. He was dying, Hannah realized, just in time to release his feet and roll out from under him before he fell. Breathing hard, she looked back to see what happened behind the school teacher. Dr. Miller stood on one of the boulders. Her good arm was straight out in front of her. In her hand, Hannah could see the glint of a gun, and it was pointed straight at her. "Oh, poor baby," she called with a look of pity on her face. "You really can't trust anyone, can you? Not even your new partner, huh?" Hannah had no idea what she was talking about, but she wasn't about to ask. She just got the feeling that one power-crazy lunatic had been traded for another. She moved to get to her feet, placing herself right below the object. "Oh, no, no, don't get up," Dr. Miller called. "I'm afraid I'm going to need you to back away from that," she instructed, and waved the gun in the direction she wanted Hannah to move. Hannah slowly nodded and scooted slightly in that direction. Dr. Miller laughed. "I need you to move way more than that, Princess. Unlike your clueless partner, I'm not about to underestimate you again," she said coldly. Hannah moved further, still not understanding what she was talking about, and glanced at Raffi. He was still breathing. She could see that. She could also see blood pool under him. She couldn't have much time left. Her mind started to run through her options. She could just run for it, but she was too far away now to reach it before Dr. Miller finished her off, and she couldn't help anyone if she was dead. Dr. Miller leapt for the next floating rock. Hannah flinched to get to her feet, but Dr. Miller recovered way too fast and had the gun aimed at her before she could move. One more leap and she'd have it. Hannah felt the ground behind her. Out of sight from the crazy English teacher, there was a rock. Smaller than the first one she used on Professor McCollin, but hopefully it would work again. Her hand closed around it. Dr. Miller made the last hop that Hannah had been dreading. She was 2 steps away from the object. Hannah had to move now. Hannah's arm snapped, released the rock with perfect aim, and just as she feared, Dr. Miller had expected it and ducked away. The instructor laughed as she centered herself and turned back to aim the gun. "Those kind of surprises only work once, dear," she chastised as she moved. But Hannah was already on her feet before Dr. Miller had a chance to focus, and she kicked her leg hard. She felt her foot connect with Dr. Miller's right hand. The gun bounced off her instep and was knocked free. Hannah took advantage of Dr. Miller's shock and was able to get her foot back under herself, change her footing, and kick straight out this time, knocking her away from the object. The woman let out a hysterical screech and charged back, knocking Hannah down right before she was able to grab the tablet. She rolled on top of Hannah and punched, connecting with her nose, making her eyes water instantly and vision blur. Another strike Hannah blocked with her elbow. Grabbing the instructor's hair on both sides of her head, Hannah aimed her forehead at the woman's nose and moved, returning a similar blow to Dr. Miller. The woman howled and flinched away. Hannah brought her elbow down again in Dr. Miller's stomach right below her rib cage. Another howl, and she drew back a little more. Hannah finally had a little room to move. She bucked hard, sending Dr. Miller to the left, and was finally able to push away from her. She lunged for the prize, nearly made it before another hand in her hair made a hard yank. The yank was followed by another and another as Hannah was pulled backwards. She grabbed at the hand and tried to pry it off. A sharp pain exploded from her knee as she felt tendons tear from a hard kick. She was back on the ground. Still, the hard yanks continued. Hannah felt several hairs break free each time. She was forced to scoot back on her bum to keep from painfully losing the rest. "I was going to be nice and let you live," the dark voice sounded behind her. "Was going to leave you here, but was going to leave you alive." She reached around and patted Hannah on the head with her withered hand as she continued. "You're a fighter. I can respect that. What I can't respect is you taking something from me that I've worked really hard to get. Because of that." Hannah flinched as she felt the leathery and bony fingers replace Dr. Miller's healthy ones in her hair and twist until the pain made her cry out. Since that hand didn't have the strength to hold her, Dr. Miller had to knot her fingers in Hannah's hair. She heard the gun scrape against the ground, knew Dr. Miller was picking it up with her good hand. Hannah felt the barrel push against the side of her face. "I just don't think I could live with myself if I didn't blow your face completely off." Hannah heard the hammer cock, heard the sharp clang of it hit home, but no explosion. Dr. Miller growled and pulled the trigger again. Same thing happened. The gun was empty. Dr. Miller screamed. Her withered hand loosened on Hannah's head. Hannah hit it hard. Dr. Miller howled in pain, and the hand retreated off her head fast. Hannah stood up with her good leg and hopped. She had to make it, had to take advantage of this distraction, had to save Rafi. Hannah stepped on her other leg. Pain shot up and down the limb, but the leg held, and she used it to run. Dr. Miller screamed again. Something hard struck Hannah in the back, probably the gun, but it didn't stop her. Nothing was going to stop her this time. Another blow to her leg, and she felt her knee buckle sideways. She was going to drop to the ground again, but this time it didn't matter. Her hand had already caught the stone tablet. She pulled the tablet to her chest as she fell. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Dr. Miller soar over her head, missing the tablet and Hannah as she leaped. Her face turned from rage to terror as she shot past and over the edge of the rock, missing anything she could have landed on. Hannah pulled herself to the edge, watched as she fell, listened to her scream grow softer until she disappeared into the blackness and everything went quiet.